And back when I first got the first cochlear implant in 1997, that was what the media picked up. Oh, it's controversial because of the deaf community. But most people who have a hearing loss are not sign language users. Most of them use oral communication. So there was a little bit of the disconnect there. Also, people who are culturally deaf, if they usually have never heard sound. They don't know what it's like to hear and communicate with regular language. So while it may be controversial, you can't tell somebody who's heard and understands being able to communicate with just about anybody that it's something that they wouldn't want to do, that just to and I was asked in a graduate school class of speech pathologists. And this was back when the first book came out. Why didn't I just learn sign language instead of getting a cochlear implant? Well, my husband doesn't know sign language. None of my family does. None of my friends do. I didn't know anybody who knew sign language. Who was I going to communicate with? And then, well, you can't tell me that sign language is going to help you when you go to the bank. The teller doesn't know sign language, and the guy in the gas station doesn't know sign language. What about the toll collector when he's telling you, well, no, you need exact change, and you don't know whether he's telling you you have a flat tire or whatever? So let me tell you, hearing is a lot better than oral communication is a whole lot better than having to rely only on sign. However, and I don't want to disparage people who use sign language, it is important to choose the mode of communication that you want, and choice is the operative word there. I will not tell somebody that they should get a cochlear implant or they should do something if they feel that it is not appropriate for them.
One of the undertold stories of the late last century is how powerful the deaf community was politically in getting funding and getting consideration for sign. That the funding has gone overwhelmingly to people who are deaf or have profound hearing, to use another term, whereas people who are hard of hearing, who are much greater in number, and certainly the handicap isn't as bad, but there's very little funding, very little understanding done for people in my position who are severely hard of hearing. And so, I mean, it's very much a tribute to them that they have been so successful in getting this funding, I think.
Well, you bring up a very important point, because I'm very active in advocacy for people with hearing loss, as you know.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest obstacles is that, by and large, the mainstream think that everybody with a hearing loss uses sign language. You'll encounter this all over. I encountered it in the theater, that they have sign language interpreters for the deaf and hard of hearing, where they really mean that there are sign language interpreters for people who use sign language, not realizing that 98% of people with hearing loss don't use sign language.
I've been to meetings where they had a sign interpreter and no one there who used sign. And I wanted an FM system,
right,
so I could hear what was going on. Oh, they didn't know about that. Oh, you know, it's overwhelmingly in that direction. It can be very frustrating.
We're speaking the same language. That's what the advocacy for people with hearing loss is all about. But it's almost like a two-step process. Number one, you have to educate that most people with hearing loss do not use sign language, and then first educate about the two other accommodations that people with hearing loss need, which is assistive devices and captioning. There's overlap. People in the deaf community do use captioning for movies, for television, that kind of thing. But that's where our worlds coincide.
Yeah. I remember when I first started to use this device, and I was walking outside and I heard birds. And I hadn't heard birds in 10 or 15 years. I got all excited. I got food and bird feed and put all the bird feed out on the deck of my house. And it was just so exciting to hear that. Now, a comment on your first book, Here Again, remarks how thrilled you were to hear the ping of an elevator stopping at your floor. I mean, just one of the simple sounds of
Well,
living in civilization. And you heard that for the first time in 25 years, and must have been so exciting for you.
What was interesting when I wrote that, to hear the elevator go ding.
Yeah.
Well, one of my friends who always had a hearing loss, who hadn't gotten her cochlear implant yet, she said she never knew that elevators went ding. It was not even that I'm not hearing it. I knew that I wasn't hearing it. She didn't even know that there was something to hear. So,
Yeah.
the people don't realize that if you've never heard it, you don't even know what you're missing. But when you get it back like this, it's enormous, enormous change in your life.
The one bird I could always hear were geese flying overhead because they have this low pitch. It's like a foghorn. Foghorns have low pitches because people hear them better. So I could always hear geese. But that was it. Like, I couldn't hear cardinals or blue jays or anything else. So.
Well, the thing with the cochlear implants, the technology keeps getting better. With my first implant, I could hear the birds. With the second implant, upgraded technology, I could hear them from a greater distance.
Yeah.
A wider parameter there.
Yeah.
And that was amazing.
It is amazing.
And the thing is, people with normal hearing, okay, people enjoy birds. That's one thing. But they don't know the special joy of hearing it if you couldn't before. If you couldn't hear that before, now it's back. It's not the same thing as having it always in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. You're quite an advocate for all kinds of things that are useful to people. And you do captioning in theaters, even where they have assistive listening systems for people who are so hard of hearing that they won't benefit from the assistive listening device. So you have captioning like they have on foreign movies, captioning in English and captioning you can get on television. And tell me how that's working.
Well, there's two actual advocacy efforts that I was involved with. Specifically was live theater, because back in 1995, my hearing was pretty much the worst it was. I was virtually deaf, and you couldn't go to the theater anymore because I couldn't use the assistive device. And there are a lot of people in that severe to profound range of hearing loss that don't benefit fully from the infrared systems in the theater. Well, I thought before I would give up on going to the theater altogether, I knew that they read sign language interpreted performances, which didn't help me and didn't help a lot of people like me. So I worked with a court reporter, the kind of people who do the captioning on television. And I said, can you load a script? And they said they'd work on it. And they developed the software to load the script and project it on an LED screen, one line at a time, in sync with the dialogue. And this system debuted at Paper Mill Playhouse in New Jersey in Millburn on 1996. And that was due to my advocacy efforts. In 1997, it went across the river to Broadway. TDF, the Theater Development Fund, they have a theater access project that addresses the needs of people with disabilities. And so they started running captioned live theater performances of Broadway shows through their TDF program. So that, in turn, gave way to taking this over to London, and we introduced captioned live theater in London. And those Brits, they didn't want us to come back and wait for us to come back, so they started their own organization, Stage Text, so they have captioned live theater there. And in this country, TDF took this on the road and did incentive grants. So you have the Kennedy Center, you have Craver Center, Broward Center, you have some of the theaters all across the country now doing captioning of live theater performances.